Peace, family. It's your brother Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Office Hours. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, Monday to Friday. Anyway, we hold night school where I break down the biggest conversations, the most urgent topics, the most controversial conversations that are happening in the world today. It's not a podcast, it's not a TV show. It is a global classroom. We do that Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then on Sundays, we do something called office hours. Office hours is where we have an even deeper dive with a single person or persons who have made a significant intervention in our lives, whether it's a deep artistic intervention, a deep cultural contribution, whether it is an intellectual project. It tends to be all three at the same time. Very rarely do people do one of those things and not all of them. But anyway, we are here every Sunday to do that deep dive with folk and to have you, the viewers, have live question and answer sessions with the person as we build. So tonight, I wanted to do something a little different. We've been talking a lot about political struggle, as we should, particularly in this month of Black August. But we haven't talked a lot about the toll that struggle can take on our spirits, on our minds, on our bodies. We talk a lot these days about trauma, but I'm not sure we always talk enough about healing. And when we do, it sometimes gets separated from the political work that we do. Anyway, all that to say, I wanted to ask this real fundamental question, right? How do we heal in a time of struggle? And I thought, who better to bring in for that conversation than my comrade, my homie, my fam, Prentis Hemphill, who is a brilliant thinker, a brilliant writer from this wonderful book that came out this past spring called What It Takes to Heal, How Transforming Ourselves can change the world. Again, What It Takes to Heal, How Transforming Ourselves can change the world. Prentice, it's so good to see you, family. The last time I saw you was in DC for your talk, which was so dope. Oh my God, you had like the coolest crowd ever out in DC for your event. So it's good to see you again.
Really good to see you too. Really good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Talk to me a little bit about this idea, first of all, of healing. I hear so much conversation these days about trauma, but I don't hear as much about healing, and I'm not sure even I have a clear idea of what healing is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of put it right on the cover of the book because I was like, I feel like this is something we need to talk about and to orient ourselves around. Because I think about healing not as something we kind of arrive at or even get to finish, but kind of the way that we orient ourselves to our own lives and how we think about the world that we build. So for me, healing, I define it in the book, is a process that's often lifelong of reestablishing our sense of safety, belonging, and dignity. Now, you can imagine all the barriers there are to each of us experiencing safety, belonging, and dignity, both kind of individual barriers in our individual lives, but also larger systemic barriers to us experiencing those things. So, healing is being oriented to safety, belonging, and dignity. And also, what we build and do is oriented towards safety, belonging, and dignity, too. That's what healing is to me.
So safety, belonging, and dignity are interesting words, right? Because when I think of safety, belonging, and dignity, all of those things are in relation to other people, other forces, other communities, other institutions. Like my safety is dependent on other people making me feel safe or unsafe, right? Belonging is inherently connected to some notion of community, and dignity. Obviously, I can have my own individual kind of conception of dignity, and I can feel dignity, but typically that conception is shaped by the world and stripped away by the world. So, how do we think about healing, which feels so personal and so individual? When, from what you're talking about, and I know from reading the book that it's also deeply connected to community, into the social world.
Yeah, I think about trauma as a relational injury. So if we want to talk about trauma, I think about it as something that interrupts our ability to be in relationship, either with our own feeling, our own felt sense of our lives or each other. It kind of dictates how we have relationship with other people, how we build community, even how we build power. And so when I think about healing, it is inherently relational. Our healing is inherently relational. I was trained as a therapist, as a trauma therapist, and I was really struck by how often we would think about someone's healing journey only in relationship to their individual perception and not kind of how their relationships changed over time or how people in their lives shifted around them or perceived them differently. It's all relational. It's all about community. We are made through relationship. We are formed and shaped through relationship. I will say that safety, belonging, and dignity are also, we can lose our capacity to feel those things. So we might be in an environment that is more or less safe. But if
Mm.
over time we felt unsafe, we might lose access to our felt sense of the possibility of that. That's the individual part that we have to heal. But healing is inherently relational.
Healing is inherently relational. So I want to first stipulate, I was thinking about this largely in a political context. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that, and I think your book forces us to think about healing outside the boundaries of just my own individual trauma or journey,
That's
although
right.
that's significant, but also in the social world. How do we tease those two things out? First, like, you know, so many of us enter the movement, we enter political struggles, we enter political organization, political activism with a bunch of trauma, a bunch of
Yeah.
untreated trauma.
Yeah.
Oh, some people would say work on that before you even join a movement, before you join the organization, before you try to struggle. Like, do something with yourself. Other
Right.
people like, no, dive on in. Where do you land on this, and how should we be thinking about it?
It's an interwoven process. It's a both and. Like if we heal through relationship, if we're made through relationship, we can be doing our healing work and be in relationship to each other, to community building, to building power. It's a both and for me. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where, okay, I'm completely healed. I've healed generational trauma. I've healed all the trauma of my life, and now I can enter into movement. It's not going to work like that. Both because of the urgency of things, but just also because you can't do it by yourself. You need
Mm,
other people. You need that experience of being with other people, being seen and recognized, having experiences that you thought were not possible for you. You need those with other people. So to me, it's a both and I will say that often our movements are not really organized around um, us as feeling human beings. I think our movements have also been kind of influenced by this individualistic kind of sometimes dehumanizing way of thinking about the
yeah.
people that are involved in them. So we don't actually treat people well, or people have to burn out to show that they really care, or have to neglect their families, or to otherwise show that they care. But I think what I'm saying is our movements also have to change in the way that we build movements, the way that we treat each other inside of movements, the way we build our organizations or organize our meetings. All of that has to shift with this understanding of our humanity, and I think of what healing really is and could be.
Ha- has that not changed a bit? I mean, I hear the awful stories when I read.
Yeah.
Uh, Nothing worse hits me sometimes than reading the stories of people who were former Panthers, women who were
Yeah.
former Panthers, or women who were in other organizations. I think about Asada, for example.
Yeah.
I think about Elaine Brown. I think about Angela Davis.
Hmm.
Um, and at that moment, even first of all, just the language of healing itself was just absent. No one was talking about healing. It was like, how do we
Yeah.
get free? How can we be stronger, be tougher, go harder, go longer? It felt very much about sort of suppressing your pain,
Yeah.
ignoring your pain, and adopting this kind of warrior model, where you fight to win, and that's all we think about. When I juxtapose that to the time I spent in Ferguson with different organizations, with the time I spent with the Dream Defenders, both here and in Palestine, the time I spent with the Movement for Black Lives and BLM,
Hmm.
um, you know, um, I gotta say, I hear such a broad and rich discourse about self-care. I hear self-care a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I hear
yeah.
people talk about therapy. I hear, what has shifted and why?
Yeah, there are shifts. So thank you for naming those shifts. There have been shifts as long as I've been doing this work. There are many years in the beginning of doing healing work, therapy, somatic work, which I do, that a lot of people just didn't want to hear it. Just wanted me to be
Mhm,
quiet talking
mhm.
about it. But that's not the time that we're in anymore. Things have shifted, and I think it's because we're starting to understand the cost. I mean, even over I'd say something like 20 years of doing organizing work, I've seen people burn out. I mean, we've lost people. There's all kinds of things have happened. And I think we've learned those lessons. But some of the elders that you named, I mean, if you talk to them right now about lessons learned, a lot of them will talk about the necessity of healing, the necessity for care, to have that practice folded into how we do that work. They've learned that lesson and they've passed those lessons on to us. And I think we're doing our best to learn and understand that. But it's a big, when you talk about how we bring our trauma to the work, that's no small thing. We're bringing generations of things to a meeting.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to figure out how to address, but it's an important, I think it's central to us building more powerful movements.
From where we are, I want to ask you a question about the society itself, because you talked about the kind of way we're geared to think about the individual and neglect the social. Um, and I know you talk about this in the book. There's a way that I would imagine that's unavoidable and inescapable within the context of capitalism, maybe more so in the context of this sort of neoliberal moment we're in, or era we're
Mhm.
in.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, profit is the ultimate arbiter of good, bad, right, wrong, victory, defeat, where the self and the individual is the unit of analysis and not the collective.
yeah.
Um, how hard is it to even do any of this work? You know what I mean, in the context of capitalism, late capitalism.
Extremely. I think it has pulled us away from so much. I mean, it's pulled us away from each other. It's pulled us away from our own feeling. I talk
Mm,
about this a lot, that I think, you know, being pulled away from our own feeling our own lives, feeling what we've experienced, feeling what we've held on to. We have to do that in order to keep producing. And the more we pull away from our feeling, from our own lives, we pull away from our empathy towards other people in the world. So it kind of, I think the structure of things, the economic structure of things right now actually requires a kind of non-feeling populace in a way. It has to remove our ability to feel. And so that's why I think embodiment work is so important, that we have to be able to actually feel our lives. But it's certainly hard in this context. All the things that we need to heal are right there, but they also feel so far away. Being able to
yeah.
feel our lives, being able to feel our community, um, and it's so necessary. I think of my work as, connected to so many other people doing this work, but it's also generational. It's not going to get resolved tomorrow or probably in my lifetime, but we plant these seeds that are about us reclaiming our own bodies, reclaiming our lives, reclaiming our relationships, and I trust that those seeds will grow.
Somebody here wrote in and said, "How do you keep from burning out, though, and still stay in the work?"
Yes, I mean, it points to your question too, because I think we're all trained into this kind of profit, ever escalating production, always more, more, more on less, 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 requires less sleep, less, all these things to create more. So I think we're all kind of subject to that, and our bodies are kind of trained into that. And I I think the way is to find rhythm, balance, to reconnect, to be in practice. For me, I try to, as much as I can, and as many places as I have choice inside of the world, inside of our systems, I practice. I practice around cultivating my felt sense of myself. We call it center in somatics. I organize my life in the places that I can around my center, around
Mm,
feeling steady, grounded, around feeling, around release. I do that so that I can be more balanced, and also say no a lot, to be honest with you, because people will, you know,
Mhm.
people will ask and pull, and they will take from you, they will extract from you. We are kind of designed to do that in a lot of ways. So I have to
How
say
hard is that
no.
in the context of a movement, though, right? Because we're on the one hand saying like, "Yo, we got to think about the collective and the group, and we can't be about the self and blah blah blah." And do you feel guilt? Because I often feel guilty saying no to speak or to show up places or to add one more person to the mentoring list or to write one more blurb or to,
Yeah.
sign one more petition. I feel guilty not doing it, and so I push myself to do more than I'm physically able to sometimes, and I have the bandwidth mentally to do as well, because of that tension.
Well, I would say don't stop there. Get curious about the tension or makes you feel guilty about saying no. That's a place for you to practice. So it's
Mm,
all a place to look. You feel guilty around saying no. I think a lot of people feel guilty around saying no. That's a place of inquiry, because you are shaped somehow to feel guilty around caring for yourself. I was doing a retreat last year with Black women and Black non-binary people, and we did a whole day of work around feeling where our limits actually are. And for everybody in that space, everybody in that healing space, their limits have been left far behind. They couldn't actually feel when they were fatigued, when they had nothing left to give. That wasn't optional for them at some point or at many points in their lives. They couldn't actually feel their body going, "Oh, I'm depleted. I have nothing left." And so
mm.
we were practicing just feeling, when is it enough? When have you given enough? When does your body say, "I'm done"? Because the more we push past those limits, there will be costs. It doesn't come at no cost. It
What
comes
are
at
what are some,
cost. Oh, go ahead.
what are some of those costs? Because I think people don't think about costs either.
Well, the costs are, you can find them in our kind of present time relationships. When you are depleted, when you are under resourced, it's going to impact how you do relationship with people. Your bandwidth, your presence, your focus, your creativity, it all gets diminished when there's less of you there. So there's costs in our present time relationships, but there's also costs to our bodies over time. If you are running high all the time, if you are accessing cortisol and adrenaline to actually get things done past your limit, that's going to come out of your heart. It's going to come out
Mm.
of your organs. There are real costs to the body. You may not experience it that day, but somewhere in your body is recording you moving past your limits. It doesn't go unnoticed by the body.
Mm. Let's talk about the body because you've mentioned the word somatics a lot. You've talked about uh, this work not just being sort of spiritual work, not just being intellectual work, but there's a physical dimension to this that's quite real. What role does trauma play on our physical bodies beyond what you just talked about, and sort of how do we use the body as a site of healing?
Yeah. Trauma is a physiological experience, meaning it happens in the body. It is not just an idea or a thought. It doesn't just happen in our brains or to our brains. Trauma is a full body experience. And what is happening with trauma essentially is that your body is kind of replaying a previous time, a moment where you thought it was a life or death moment. Now, that could have been neglect by your parents, it could have been physical, emotional abuse, it could have been all kinds of things. But what was happening is that your body was kind of mediating this. Is this life or death? Is this life or death? Can I belong? Am I going to be excluded? And that response, that reactivity in your body got stuck. And when I say the
Mm,
reactivity in your body gets stuck, I mean actually the way the hormones course through your body, the heart rate, the way your muscles may have tensed up so that you could fight back or run, that gets replayed and replayed and replayed over time. You can be triggered by something and have it replay, or I think what happens for a lot of us is that it becomes more general. It becomes something that we kind of hold on to all the time. If we experience trauma, especially trauma in our home of origin, over time, it kind of takes the shape of something that seems like a personality. So we do it almost all the time, and we carry it to all of our relationships or our meetings, or we carry it around as though it's our personality. When actually underneath there is in us that was before the trauma. So the body is so central because it's actually the body that is responding. If you're in a trigger, it's your heart rate that's increasing. It's it's cortisol that's coursing through your body. There are physiological responses. It's not just an idea. And so people think, they go to talk therapy, which was my training. You go to talk therapy and you think, oh, I have an insight. Oh, I get what I'm doing now in this situation. I get what I'm doing in this fight. So now I'm going to just change it. But you can't do that because your whole body is recruited into protecting you from something that it perceives as a threat. And so I actually work with the body so that our bodies are actually able to do different things under the same pressure. So we mean that, where I might have felt a kind of need to fight somebody or need to run, I'm actually able to recenter and stay present. Because trauma it's time traveling. You're going back to the past and bringing something to the present. Healing is about coming into the present so that you can actually see what's actually happening now and the options that are available to you in this actual moment.
As you're talking, I'm looking at the comments and people are sharing a lot and people are saying a lot. I kind of laughed when I saw this when Jesus Christ healed me of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like Jesus would be telling people, "Yo, go to therapy." Um, how much should we be leaning on therapy? There are people in my audience who go to therapy. I'm one of those people who goes to therapy. There are others who don't believe in therapy. I've heard people say therapy is narcissistic, it's European. I've heard it's dangerous, it's unhelpful.
Mm-hmm.
How do you respond to people who have those kinds of concerns or critiques of therapy? Are there legitimate critiques of therapy as such?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because your therapist is a human being. So, if they haven't done their work, they're going to be bringing their stuff to your therapy session. So you have to use a lot of discernment to figure out who it is that who works well with you and who you feel like gives you enough room to be in your own process. But I would say that, I work as a somatic practitioner. That's my background. That's what I do because no matter what modality it is, even if in my opinion, even if it's spiritual, if it's therapeutic, whatever's happening is happening in the body. So if you feel something shift or lift off of you or change, or you release something, you forgive, it's all happening in your body. It's not
Mhm.
happening somewhere else. And so
Right.
I like to work directly with the body because then we can sort of monitor, understand how the body is responding. So I work somatically. I work with people in groups somatically. I do body work with folks. I also do kind of like therapy with people, but using the body as the primary site of information. Because a lot of people think they're doing something, but their body's doing something different.
Yes, that is very true. Somebody asked a question that I thought was super interesting. Can cognitive behavioral therapy help with this? I'd rather not rehash my whole life. I just want coping strategies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it can help to a degree, and it can. I think a lot of people have had a lot of success with different behavioral therapies. I think they can get us into practice that takes us out of our kind of established habits and puts us into new habits. And again, that's working with the body's habits. I think there are some places where there's a need for release, a need for uh, sometimes we talk about emotions getting stuck in the body, but really what that means is certain kind of behaviors keep happening in the body, certain kind of tensions keep happening habitually in the body, and sometimes there needs to be a big enough release to let that thing go. So I
Mm,
really think CBT does some things and some things it can't do. The other thing I would say that is necessary to build no matter what is a relationship with yourself. So
mm,
being not in our reactive self. A lot of us spend a lot of time in our reactive selves. We move from our reactive selves. We joke about like, I wish somebody would. It's like, that's funny, but also probably your nervous system is anticipating something all the time. And
mm.
I I get it. I felt that way too. And we need to be in the type of relationship with ourselves where we can reflect on what am I bringing to this moment? Am I bringing something from yesterday that I didn't resolve? Am I bringing something from 10 years ago that I didn't resolve? How do I actually want to show up now? How do I bring my openness, my availability to whatever is happening now? And I think that's it's a nervous system state to some
Man,
degree.
there's
It's a
also a
way of being.
reminder. There's also a reminder of what it means to live in a space of in unsafety and insecurity and even
Yeah,
precarity. Because the
yeah,
mindset of I wish a MF would might be something I might have at a certain moment. But I know growing up, I had to have that in the back of my mind.
all the time.
Right. And it had functional purpose, right? It wasn't
Yeah,
just like I'm posturing. It was I need to be in a constant battle from the bus stop to school or walking through the mall from by
stay ready.
myself. And I got to be ready so that I'm
Hmm.
prepared to defend myself or what have you. And so there's a wear and tear on the body and on the spirit and on the mind that takes that I hadn't really thought about until I started reading your work more carefully. And someone raised an issue here. Blue said part of it is about decolonizing our ideas by healing as well, therapy, but also not neglecting the spirit. I think that's partly in
Yeah,
response to my critique about Jesus. Therapy isn't always holistic. I go to therapy, but I get limpias as well.
absolutely.
So talk to me about that part of it, because there's a way that the modern Western establishment ain't got room for the limpia, but they got room for, talk therapy. They got room for other things, but not
That's
that.
so
Not
real.
a job. Yeah. So how do we think about that?
Yeah, I mean, part of that, when we talked about the individual as a unit in the beginning, it's like, wouldn't it be convenient if we could just go to individual therapy and get ourselves adjusted to current conditions enough to just live in them? That makes sense as the healing modality of our current system because it's very limited. It doesn't look generationally, it doesn't look collectively, it can't look in relational directions. It is very individual. For me, spirituality is about relationship. It's my relationship across time with those who've come before me. It's my relationship with what is bigger than me. And for me, the body is my way of accessing. When I grew up in a Christian household and you'd hear the body as a temple. And I grew up thinking that meant, when I'm at church, I have to put something over my knees so that, I cover up my knees. It meant that I have to look cute for somebody else externally. I thought that's what it meant when they said the body is a temple. But as I've done more healing work, I realized that the body is actually an access point to relationship with everyone and everything. So the
Mm.
temple is a place that you go to commune with spirit. The body is that place too. It's a place to actually commune with my own aliveness, my own spirit, and a way to access what's bigger than me. That's to me the essence of what it means by the body is a temple. I go there. I go there to connect with all.
Well, I have never considered temple in that. I've only thought about it in the sense of like you viewing it as sacred and a site of necessary defense and protection. Like, don't eat that. The 10 things that are on
Yeah.
my table right now, but not to think about it as a place that I can be in conversation or community with, a place that I can visit, or engage as an entry point.
To
To
me,
all this.
that's the meaning. To me, that's the meaning. And as I practice, I was like, oh, I get it now. I get the message there.
Yo, that is powerful. Just a couple more questions. I know we
Yeah.
gotta run. I'm always so excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
Uh, we're in a moment of extraordinary suffering. I mean, every moment to be human is to suffer, right? To live
Yeah.
in this world is to suffer. I feel a lot of movement people feeling extra weight right now. It reminds me of 2014. I felt people feeling a lot of extra weight, a little bit in 2022, like people feeling that weight.
Yeah.
Um, watching a genocide take place, uh, all of our news and a kind of collective indifference to it, watching what's happening in Congo, what's happening in Sudan,
Yeah.
watching what's happening right here in the United States.
Yeah.
Um, it's impossibly difficult and traumatic, and I think people are trying to navigate all of that and deal with their own personal stuff and
Hmm.
figure out how to heal and figure out how to do something about it. Like, how do we make sense of that? What is this moment? How should we think about this moment?
You know, um, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I can't say that I've fully landed, in a place that I feel like this feels clear to me. But earlier today, I was talking with a friend. we were at an action this morning for Palestine, and I was, having this conversation about how I actually feel in a way that we are awakening more to how genocide has played a role in the creation of the world as we know it.
Mm,
And we are witnessing active genocide, and we are awakening to the reality of genocide,
yes.
which is now, I mean, it's horrific and devastating, and it has been. And it has been. We think about, even thinking about the Congo alone, how many genocides have happened in the Congo
Yeah.
in the last 300, 400 years.
Right. Right.
We are
Yeah.
awakening to the understanding. And so I think that is, I am praying that that transforms us, our awareness of the real brutality that exists, but is also necessary in a way, or has been necessary for the way the world has built itself, or the way the world has been built. I hope that that changes us deeply. And we are in such an incredible, there's like multiple crises, like the compounding and accelerating, and our own reactionariness is accelerating, and we're kind of ping-ponging
Lord.
inside of this. So, what's felt so important for me in practice and in my practice community is like, can we feel centered, not looking away? Some spiritual traditions want you to like leave the reality of things. But can I be in practice that brings me here without looking away and without joining in the reactivity, which it seems to accelerate certain kinds of destruction and division?
Yes.
And can I figure out what actions to take with other people that feel like they build towards something that I have to, in a way, grieve? It might not get us all the way there in a way that I can see in my lifetime, but that I give something solid to my child. I give something solid to your child, a path, a little bit of a clearing. And so I think to me, it's a spiritual practice. It's an embodiment practice of centering, grounding, and being with what actually is, which is quite challenging, but not trying to escape in unnecessary fights or reactionaries. There's some necessary fights. I just want to be clear about that. But
For
also
sure.
not escaping into being reactionary or escaping into being too right or too good in this moment. I don't think that's a worthwhile pursuit. I think right action is a worthwhile pursuit, but my individual goodness is, I don't think none of us get to be good in this historical moment. We do the
Mm.
best we can.
We do the best we can. Um, does that ever let us off the hook though?
Say it again.
Does that claim, I did the best I could, nobody can be good right now? Does that ever let us off the hook from not doing the work or from not
Not if
being?
you really did the best you could.
We lie to ourselves so much.
Absolutely.
How do we
Absolutely.
how do we keep ourselves honest about that?
I think partly is to me, it's a deep spiritual practice to go, I don't get to be good, but I get to work towards good.
Mm,
I don't get to be superior, but I get to work towards good. To me, that does something powerful in my practice. It clarifies something for me. It keeps me from hiding and lying to myself in certain ways.
mm,
That to me is a practice that I think a lot of us have to take. We have to make hard decisions. I think we have to make hard actions. We need to make demands. We need to be clear on what it is we're doing, have strategy, be able to see long term. And none of us get to escape the we don't get to escape this world. And so in this world where there is so much devastation and pain and genocide and disenfranchisement and beauty and joy and laughter,
mm.
we have to live it. We have to live it. And as best we can, I mean that. We have to live it as best we can in each moment, as present as we can in each moment, not as a escape, not as a cop out, but as a risk. That's actually a risk. To be
Yeah.
as human as you can right now is an incredible risk.
We got a couple quick questions here. One is
Yeah.
from Christy Z, excuse me. Uh, how does how do you feel
I'm
about
not a doctor, but I'll take it.
how do you feel about EMDR therapy? I don't know what that is, so
Yeah. I feel great about it. It is a modality that uses kind of the movement of the eyes. I am not a trained EMDR therapist. I have done EMDR. I have some therapists that do that are good friends of mine. Um, but it's a desensitization process in the body
oh,
using
I see
emotion.
eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think it is a great therapy. We do elements of it in the somatic work that I do because there's actually places where when you move your eyes, you'll see kind of glitches, places where people can't move their eyes. And if you work with the memory, it can do a lot to release and desensitize us to really painful memories.
Wow. Wow, that's helpful. And then we got another question coming in here from Jazz LP, who says, is it even possible for Black people to live due to the fact that we're constantly moving from one trauma to the next due to what systemic racism cost equals a total diminishment?
Yeah. So this is a real question. I think a lot of us are experiencing traumas, are there's active, live, ongoing traumas in our families and in our communities. And I will say, I think we know a lot about living in really impossible conditions, but I don't mean that in a romanticizing way. I mean that the technology that our ancestors have offered us in how we gather and how we pay attention to culture, what we create inside of culture, that is not just things that we do because we're human. Those are actually technologies for um, bringing us into a certain collectivity and a collective awareness and alignment. There are all these things that we've done over time that have created that bond and connection.
Mhm.
I think we can live. I think it's not about, it's like, what do you do with your children? What do you do when your family comes together? How present are you? How
Mhm.
loving are you? How
Mhm.
generous are you? It's these moments to me that are like portals into healing, into aliveness. We have these moments with each other. How are we in them? What are
Yeah.
we bringing to our relationships with our partners or our spouses? Are we able to fall into comfort, fall into feeling, really process with each other, reveal to each other, be vulnerable with each other? That's when everything transforms and transmutes, when we can actually be present in our connections with each other. I think we live in those moments. I think our elders and our ancestors taught us how to live in those moments. And so, I invite us to look at our lives with that kind of perception, with that kind of openness. Are all these moments that are available to you for healing and for connection with each other. So be in them, be fully in them, get every ounce of love and joy and life and presence out of each of those moments. Take none of them for granted, and it will buoy you. It will
Mhm.
enliven you. It will carry you from one moment to the next. But live that way. There is a lot of pain, but never forget to drop into the portal of beauty and love and possibility. It's always there.
It's always there. Last question for you. Someone wrote in and said, how do you articulate to an avoided family the need to look into the past in order to properly begin healing in the present? I think that's a classic problem that many of us have.
Yeah.
I want to add another layer to it because there's some other people in the conversation who are also asking about ancestral trauma. The language of ancestral trauma has come up. So there's like the long distance wounds and of white supremacy, of all the things, right? And then there's that's the long view of history. And then there's the like, my family been through some shit. Me, my parents, my grandparents, my siblings, whoever, we've been through some things that we don't acknowledge, whether it's
Yeah.
abuse, whether it's drugs, whether it's poverty, whatever the thing people are dealing with, we got some stuff to deal with that
Yeah.
abstract, it's very direct, and we just pretend we don't see it. How do we reckon with history? How do we force ourselves or force others maybe to be accountable to recent and distant history? How do we do it?
Well, the question, I was just on my book tour and I got a lot of questions from therapists and practitioners that were asking, how do I get my clients to release or let go? And, I say to them, you do whatever it takes. You get creative enough to build the space that they need to let go. The question is, what will make this person feel safe enough to let go? What will make this person feel safe enough to release? That's a question for the therapist, and you get creative about how to create that kind of environment in the place, because that's the only question that matters. So when you talk about us being able to feel the things that we're holding on to, the question is, what is the environment? What are the set of conditions? What are the set of relationships that allow me to feel what I have been unwilling to or afraid to feel up until this point? What do I need to have in place to do that? Maybe it's with other people, maybe it's in a ceremony, maybe it is with a therapist, whatever it is, that is the central question. The other thing I will say is that you can't get anyone to do anything ever, really.
You ain't never
Unfortunately.
lied. You ain't never lied. You can't get nobody to do
I
nothing.
wish I could. I wish I could, but you can't. But I will tell you some things that I've learned along the way, which is that a lot of times, and this is I'm gonna do that trick that I did on you earlier, Mark. Is a lot of times we're like, how do I get them to do this? When the question is, how do I grieve that they have been unwilling to do this and I've longed for it for so long? How do I let myself feel alone in this and face my my fear of feeling alone? How do I do my work around it so that I'm no longer reactive to the decision somebody else is making? Because what we don't understand sometimes is that we end up in this reactive dance with somebody. They know you want them to feel something.
Yeah.
It may be
Yeah.
deeply in their unconscious, but they may be like, here, this person comes around again, trying to make me feel this stuff. They can feel the tension. But when you are able to be centered and okay, if you are able to process your grief, you're able to process your longing and maybe get your needs met elsewhere, you'll no longer be dependent on whoever this person is to do something that maybe they are not willing to do, not going to do in this lifetime, whatever it might be. The other thing I will say is that love and acceptance is the only thing that heals anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are, and I mean this for us in our own journeys, when you can love the parts of you and accept, and not just love in a kind of like whatever kind of way, but when you really accept that whatever habits you have, whatever you suffer with, whatever you do that annoys you, that probably you came by it honestly. A lot of the things we do have to do with the conditions in which we learned how to do them, and it was our best thing we could figure out how to do. A lot of us were kids that were just trying to figure out how to make it. Kids trying to figure out how to be okay. Kids trying to figure out how to be loved. And we may have come up with a whole lot of things to make that happen, but until you can accept that you make sense, that there's a reason why you are the way you are, and accept and give gratitude, deep gratitude for all the ways that you have learned to react to not ideal conditions, that's when it can let go. That's when it can transform. That's when it can evolve. Is when it's accepted, not when we try to fight it all the time. And the same is true for people. That doesn't mean we have to be in close proximity to people all the time, but it means when we release them from their obligation to meet a need that they are not actually trying to meet, is when the possibility that they might transform opens up. If that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And that transformation is what we're all looking for, both in ourselves and in others. But just your reminder, even that we can't control what the others do. We can't do what the
No.
other, we can't do it for them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, we got to find our own path. We got to do our own healing journey, and we got to find a way to live while we're
Yeah.
on that journey. Because, and I think that's the reminder to me. There's so many things in life from relationship stuff to work stuff to, you know, even starting this YouTube channel. It's like, everything has to be perfect before I start. Everything needs to be resolved.
Right. Oh God.
You get
Yeah.
to a point where you realize that that's just not how things work, and you'll be waiting forever.
Yeah.
Um, you don't want to enter,
Absolutely.
yeah, you don't want to enter things without a reflection, or you don't want to go into things so wounded and without an action plan for being better. But there's a middle ground here that I think we need to think about a little bit more. That I need to think about a little bit more. Anyway, people want to know how they can find you. Everybody here is in love with you now. So first of all, y'all get the book. If you haven't gotten the book already, I'm saying it because they're not going to tell you because they're too modest. But it's called "What It Takes to Heal: How Transforming Ourselves Can Change the World." I learned so much from it, and it was a delight to read and to share. So everybody, please make sure you grab it right now wherever books are sold, but especially if you can, independent and/or Black-owned bookstores always dope to do.
Please
Um,
do.
do that thing. But where else? How else can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. You can get a hold of me on my website, prentishempill.com. On Instagram at Prentis Hemphill. My organization, the Embodiment Institute, we practice together. We have a online virtual practice community. We are always in practice together, so please join us there. The embodimentinstitute.org. We're also on Instagram. And you can listen to me on my podcast, Becoming the People, where having conversations about movement, about life, about spirit, and from a way that I think is actually deeply embodied. So that's another way. And Mark, I love this. This is so fun. I love your community. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon. I, I'm
Definitely.
gonna have to start billing you. You have to start billing me though, because I need some extra therapy session. I'll see
Thank
you
you.
soon. Peace.
Yeah, y'all take care. Bye.
Everybody, that was an amazing conversation. It was one. Sometimes you get conversations that you don't even know you needed, but you do, and you find them and you stumble upon them. So I'm grateful. I've been meaning to have Prentice on for a long time, and life was life and for me, and I was like, I gotta make this happen, and we made it happen, and I'm so grateful. And we gotta have Prentice back on again, and we gotta do more conversations about mental health and healing and love and all of the things that I believe are central to the work we do as people who love freedom. Man, I'm looking at these comments and they're like, they're just so amazing, man. I'm I'm watching people talk about how this mattered to them. Not just that it mattered, um, but how. You know, people who I don't even who I see sometimes, people I never see here. People coming out the woodwork. People who are here but don't share or sharing deeply personal things. And I want to thank you all in the comment section for being so loving and caring, not just to my guests, but to each other, as they were incredibly vulnerable, sharing pieces of themselves, pieces of their lives, confessing and opening the world up to their trauma, their pain, and their healing journey. So just thank you for that, everybody. Thank you for watching Office Hours. Y'all know what it is. We do this every single Sunday at 9 p.m. Make sure you keep watching. Make sure you share this content, everybody. Go on Facebook, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, go on wherever you can, and share the content whenever you can. Also, family, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And as you know what I'm about to say, hit that join button if you are so inclined. It means a lot when you hit that join button. It makes you a monthly subscriber to the channel. And by being a monthly subscriber to the channel, it gives us the financial stability that we need, honestly, to put out work like this, to book someone like Prentice, to arrange it, to have lighting, to have production, to have editing, to do all the things we do every single night here. On Monday to Friday, we do night school, 9 p.m. Eastern, office hours Sunday at 9 p.m. Coffee and Books podcast, 9 a.m. The Classroom to Set with Mumia Abu Jamal, Sundays at 9 a.m. Sundays at 9 a.m. We do it all on the muscle. So if you all could join, we would be so grateful. I want to shout out, by the way, Kimi Obayada Acosta, who gifted 5 memberships. Hopefully one of y'all grabbed them 5 memberships or 5 of y'all grabbed them 5 memberships, because that's such a beautiful and special thing. Everybody, if you can't hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber, I ask that you make a one-time donation for the month. Go here. You see Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. Again, this is how we keep the channel alive. We don't have a billionaire backing us. We don't have corporate media writing checks, cutting checks for us. We do this with the power of the people. So if you go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, we're grateful. If you leave $1, we're grateful. If you leave $1 million, we're grateful. Anything in between, we're grateful. But I do ask that if everybody watching right now were to leave $10, if everybody watching right now were to donate $10 through one of these platforms, we will meet all of our financial goals for the month. So just consider it, family, if you can do it. And if you can't, that's okay. Money's not everything. Again, like the content, subscribe to the content. Don't cost you nothing. Share the content. That don't cost you nothing neither. But most of all, make sure you study the content, because that's what night school and office hours are all about. I'll see you later, fam. Peace.